Hello guys, welcome to session 6. In last session we have discussed about the cross pollination, and we know that there are two factors which are helps in the or there are two agents which are helps in the cross pollination. So one is abiotic and one is biotic. So abiotic factors like water and wind, that is were discussed in the last session. So today in this session we are going to focusing on the biotic agents or biotic factors. So biotic means living things. So here the transfer of pollen is done by the living things. So that is what we are calling as a biotic agent. So next one concept, that is a zoophily. So transfer of pollen grains from stamens to stigma of an other flower of a same species by animals is called zoophily. Okay. So transfer of pollen grains to stigma of the same species by animals is called zoophily. Okay. So mode of pollination in majority of flowering plants. Mode of pollination in majority of the flowering plants is by animals. So cross pollination is almost it is done by the animals. So animals like bees, butterflies, ants, moth, birds, bats, right? So these are the common pollinating agent. Okay. Among the animals, insects. Among the animals, insects, particularly bees, are the dominant biotic pollinating agents. Okay, we know that. So majority of the cross pollination is done by animals. In that, insects are dominated. In insect, so honeybees or bees are the dominating biotic pollinating agents. Okay, even some larger animals such as primates like lemurs, arboreals, rodents, some reptiles, yes, are the pollinators in some species. Okay, so next concept, that is a pollen robbers or nectar robbers. Many insects may consume pollen or nectar without bringing about pollination. Such floral visitors are referred as pollen robbers or nectar robbers. Okay, so we know that the cross pollination is done by the animals, especially insects. Okay, some insects are there. Okay, some insects are there. They will consume pollen grains, or they will consume, or they will utilize a nectar, but they will not transfer the pollen grains from one flowers to other flowers. So those insects we are calling as a pollen robbers or nectar robbers. So this slide we can observe the number of pictures. Okay, so we'll discuss one by one. First one, so we can see the pictures. Okay, in below that we have mentioned that it is a entomophily. Yes, entomophily means transfer of pollen grains by insect is called entomophily. So below that in bracket we also mention one more word, that is a hymenopterophily. Hymenopterophily. Okay, transfer of pollen grains especially by honeybees is called hymenopterophily. Okay, in second picture, okay, we can observe that birds. So below that we have mentioned ornithophily. Okay, so transfer of pollen grains by birds is called ornithophily. Next picture we can observe that. Okay, so below mentioned that there is an anthropophily. Okay, anthropophily means, yes, it is a transfer of pollen grains by humans is called anthropophily. Yes, in this diagram we can observe that. So there's appearance of hands. Okay, the person holding the stamens, he's dusting the pollen grains on stigma. Okay, so this is what we're calling as anthropophily. Next diagrams we can observe snails. Okay, below that we have mentioned malacophily. Okay, malacophily means transfer of pollen grains by snails is called malacophily. Okay, next diagram we can observe. So, and the animal is, it is a bat. Okay, transfer of pollen grains by bat is called chiroptery or chiropterophily. Transfer of pollen grains by bats is called chiropterophily. In this slide, we are going to discussing about the characteristics of entomophilous flowers. We know that 80% of the insect pollination is due to the honey bees. Okay, so the entomophilous flowers develop a certain adaptation to attract the insect. We discuss one by one. First one is colors. Okay, so in most of cases flowers are made of attractive by various colors by which they can attract the insects from the distance. Okay, so we know that the flower is consist of different parts, in especially the petals. So these petals are, they are colored in nature, and these petals which will attract the insects for pollinations. Okay, second point, the small flowers. In case of small flowers, they become conspicuous by their grouping. Okay, as we know that if the flowers are small in size, they are not so much of attractive. So the flowers will be groups together and they'll become attractive, or they'll become conspicuous. Okay, third point, scent, or it produce fragrance. Okay, to attract the insects, the flowers are producing fragrance or scent, especially in case of nyctanthus. As we know that jasmine, it is known for its fragrances. So this fragrance, it will attract the insects for pollination. In some plants like the datura and some other plants, their flowers are producing some kind of odor, bad smell odor. So this odor also attract the some kind of insects for pollinations. Okay, next one is nectar. Okay, so nectar is produced by nectar glands which are situated in different positions. Yes, these are present in the different positions. So nectar having the, yes, the materials, or the, it is kind of food for the insects. For that, the insects will be the enters into the flowers to collect the nectar. When enter into the flowers, the it come in contact with the anther and stigma. So some pollen grains, it will attach to the on the body of the insects. Some flowers consist of pollen guiders which helps to insect reach the nectar glands. Okay, so while moving out of the flower, they will carry the pollen grains on their body surface. Like this, when we move from the, or it will shift from the one flowers to other flowers, that time it will helps in the pollinations. Next point, edible pollen. Certain flowers are offers the edible pollen for the insects. So especially bees will be collecting this edible pollens in the large quantity to nourish their young ones. Okay. Last point, pollen grains of entomophilous flowers are sticky and rough so that they can easily get stuck on insect body. Okay, if they are dry, if the pollen grains are dry, they are not able to attach on the surface of the insect body. So to favor the pollinations, so these pollen grains are, they are very sticky, so they were easily stick on the surface of the insects, and this will help in the pollinations. Okay, we're going to repeat again characteristics of pollination by insects. First one is, because of its color nature it will attract the insects. Second one is, because of its fragments it will attract the insects for pollinations. Third one is nectar, to collect the nectars. The insects will be entering into the flower, while moving out it will carry the pollen grains. Next one is, some flowers offer the pollen which are edible to the insects. So this pollen, edible pollen, to help to nourish their young ones. Last one, the pollen grains are, they are sticky in nature and it will easily stick on the body surfaces. Okay, so these are the characteristics of entomophilous flowers to attract the insect. In this slide, we're going to discuss about advantages and disadvantages of cross pollination. We'll look at advantages. Okay, so the plants which are undergoing for the cross pollination, their offsprings are having the better chance, or they are having the better adaptation to environmental condition, means they can withstand the adverse conditions of the environment. Okay, second point, new variety may be producers, means here in the cross pollination the pollen grains will be shifted, or it will be transferred from the one flower to other flower within the same species, but there will be the chances of carrying the genes from the one plant to, or one flower to other flowers, and these things will be bring the new variety in the offsprings. Third point, so the pollen grains are produced in the large quantities, that is called an abundant, and the viable seeds are producers. Okay, so these are the advantages of cross pollinations. So next one, disadvantages. Okay, so pollination is not always certain, means it not be accurate, or it not be definite. Okay, and it must and should require some agent. Without the agent, the pollen grains will not cannot be transferred from the one flowers to other flowers, and it should not be happen at the proper time. Okay, second point, pollen has to be produced in large quantity. Yes, here the to ensure the fertilization, or to ensure the uh, pollination, so here the pollen grain should be produced in the large quantity, so there is a chances of lot of wastage of pollen grain. So these are the disadvantages of cross pollination. In this slide we want to discuss about pollen pistil interactions. Okay, so as we know that, so because of pollination, so pollination means it is a transfer of pollen grains to stigma, that is what we are calling as pollination. It may be self-pollination, or it may be the cross pollinations. Okay, the pollen grains will be transferring on the stigma surface. Okay, after landing on the stigma surface, or stigma surface of the pistil, the pollen grains, it gets germinated. Okay, after falling on the stigma surface of the pistil, the pollen grains, it will get germinated, and it is stimulated by the moisture and nutrient on the stigma. Okay, the whatever the moisture content on the stigma and nutrient things present on the stigma, it will stimulate the pollen grains to germinate. Okay, so pollen grains here will produce a small germ tube. It will produce a small germ tube, and that germ tube emerge from the germ pores. Okay, this is we discuss in the yes we are discussing the structure of the pollen grains. Okay, so here the tube will be emerge from the germ pores, and this germ tube, it will continue to grow as a pollen tube. So initially it is small outgrowth will be from the that pollen grains. So later it is grow as a pollen tube. This pollen tube, it will enter into the enter into the pistil through the stela regions, and it will reaches to the embryo sac, or it will reaches to the embryo sac, or it will enter into the embryo sac due to the chemical attraction. How it is going to reach to this embryo sac means it is all because of the chemical attractions, and that pollen tube reach the egg cells. So these pollen tubes are carrying the male gametes, and this it will help in the syngamy or fertilization process. So this entire whole thing we're going to considering as it is as a pollen pistil interactions. I'm going to repeat again. Pollen pistil interaction means after pollen grains are falling on the stigma, due to the moisture content and nutrient media present on the stigma, it will get stimulated and it will produce a small germ tube, and later this small germ tube continue grow as a pollen tube, and this pollen tube carrying the male gametes. Okay, this pollen tube, it will enters inside the pistil and reaches to the embryo sac through the micropyle. So how it is going to reach this embryo sac means it is because of due to the chemical attraction, the pollen tube reaches the egg, and that pollen tube carrying the male gametes, and this male gamete fuse with the egg cell and leads to the syngamy or fertilization. So this whole thing we are considering as pollen pistil interaction.